What's going on, everyone? Mr. Octagonal here. Now today we are back with the draft grades. We uploaded the NFC one earlier today, and now we are going to be doing the AFC. This is likely my last 2019 draft related video, which is very sad, but I will still have NFL draft related stuff like redrafts and regrading drafts, and obviously NBA mocks as well. So that's what to expect in the near future, and obviously the gaming stuff isn't going anywhere either. So without further ado, we're going to go division by division just like I did in the NFC edition, and it's pretty much the same thing, but obviously with different teams. We're going to be starting off in the AFC East with the New York Jets, who had a much better draft than their New York counterpart. I'm going to give the Jets an A-. I feel that all four AFC East teams each had really good drafts. So starting with the Jets at number 3, they took Quinnen Williams, defensive tackle from Alabama. I think he's the best player in this draft class. He's just such a dominant force inside, mixed with pass rushing ability and run stopping. I think he's a phenomenal player, and the Jets got the best player in this 2019 draft class. So can't really go wrong with that pick. After that, I don't love their draft after that, but it wasn't bad. They did not have a second-round pick. That was part of the Sam Darnold deal. In the third round, they got Ja'Kai Polite, edge rusher from Florida. At this time, 3 months ago, he would have been a first-round pick, coming off a really good year, but struggled during the combine, struggled during interviews, and this was his only really good year, so he is a risk, but I like for risk Chuma Edoga. That's a fun name, late in the third round, solid pick. They could use some offensive linemen for sure. And then after that, their only other value pick, I feel, on day 3 was Blake Cashman, the linebacker from Minnesota. Very athletic, very talented player. So overall, really good draft for the Jets, and I think they could surprise some people. I think they have the chance to make the run to the playoffs this year. I give out 1 A+ every year, and this year I've decided to give it to the Buffalo Bills. I was really considering the Redskins, and I think you could go either way with it, but I am giving it to Buffalo. They got Ed Oliver in the first round. He's been my number 1 player in the class almost all year, and then Quinnen Williams passed him late, only because Williams is a better pass rusher. I think Ed Oliver is almost as good as Quinnen Williams. Really solid value at 9. Then they traded up to get Cody Ford in the second round. All they had to do was give up an extra 5th. Great value. Ford is a really good player. I probably had him in my top 15, if I'm not mistaken. Round 3, I'm not huge on the Devin Singletary selection. I don't think he'll be great in the NFL. I think he can be a solid rotational playmaker, so I guess it's not that bad of a pick. Dawson Knox, tight end, Ole Miss, very, very raw, but he does have some athletic upside. And then I thought they made a pair of nice picks on day 3. Voshon Joseph, linebacker from Florida. He can play inside and outside. He was my number 4 number 4 linebacker in general in the class, behind Devin White, Devin Bush, and Mack Wilson. And then in the 6th round, Jaquan Johnson, safety for Miami. Sort of a poor man's Jonathan Abram in a way. Thumper, old school safety. I thought Johnson had 3rd round value, so really good draft for the Bills. I am giving them my A+, even though I did not love their 3rd round. And I did love the Redskins' 3rd round selection in Terry McLaurin. But the only thing that really put me over the edge with Buffalo is the signing of Tyree Jackson in undrafted free agency. I love Tyree Jackson, my number 48 overall prospect, 2 spots ahead of Daniel Jones. Yes, 2 spots ahead of Daniel Jones. Tyree Jackson reminds me so much of his new teammate Josh Allen, who he will be backing up. Big frame, pretty mobile, cannons for arms, but not the most accurate. And that's the only thing that put me over the edge with Buffalo. And other than that, all around, really nice draft for the Bills. Miami Dolphins are going to get an A- for me. Really solid draft for them. In the first round, they got Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle from Clemson. Very high floor, very high character. He's not going to stir up any trouble in the locker room, and I know he's going to be a good player. Just don't know about the ceiling. He definitely does not have the potential that Quinnen Williams or Ed Oliver has at that defensive tackle spot. In round 2, they traded down with New Orleans to get a future second, and then with the second this year, they used that to acquire Josh Rosen. Absolutely brilliant by the Dolphins front office, not trading the 48th pick, but getting extra assets, not being forced into trading that original second-round pick, and then getting Josh Rosen for just the 62nd pick. He has a chance to be a franchise-level quarterback, and I think he's better than Daniel Jones, who was the 6th pick. So, really, really good trade by the Dolphins. That definitely is an account in this grade. I did not account the Khalil Mack or Amari Cooper trades because those happened a while ago, but the Josh Rosen one was during the draft, so it does count. Then after that, Michael Dieter in the 3rd round. He can play tackle, he can play guard, very versatile, and they do have some holes on the O-line. And then in the 7th round, Myles Gaskin, running back from Washington. Lots of production with the Huskies. I think he'll be a really solid player in the NFL, and that's really nice value to pick him up late. The New England Patriots are going to be getting an A- from me. In the 1st round, they took N'Keal Harry, wide receiver, Arizona State. He's my number 4 receiver in the class, and at the time, the number 4 receiver on the board. But I don't think it's a reach. I think 32 is fair. Obviously, I love DK Metcalf, and then A.J. Brown and Hakeem Butler were barely ahead of Harry, so you could basically say he was the 2nd best receiver on the board if you want. Obviously, I love Metcalf, and I'm putting him above N'Keal Harry, but other than that, I think it's pretty much a 4-way tie with Marquise Brown and then those other 3. Harry is a very good route runner, very good hands, very reliable, and I know Tom Brady's going to love him. In the 2nd round, Joejuan Williams, corner from Vanderbilt, extremely tall. I believe he's 6'4", and he's definitely going to use his height to his advantage. That's definitely his best attribute. Did not have a great combine, and if he did, there was a chance he would have gone round 1. 3rd round, Chase Winovich, edge rusher from Michigan. Really nice value pick. Very productive season, sort of like a poor man's Montez Sweat when it comes to speed and athleticism. I thought that was a really nice pick by New England. Damian Harris, I don't get that pick. The value is fine, but they don't really need a running back. I guess he can be the long-term replacement to Rex Burkhead. Both of those two are very powerful, and then Sony Michel and James White can be the main 2. They also got Yannick Kajusте late in the 3rd round. I thought that was pretty nice value. Hajalte Throwhall in the 4th, good value. Jarrett Stidham at quarterback. He's shown a ton of flashes at Auburn and has a chance to be really solid. Will he be Tom Brady's heir apparent? Probably not. And then after that, Ken Webster, one of the final picks in the draft. He has also shown some flashes at Ole Miss. I feel like he's been in college for about 27 years now, but overall, nice draft by New England, unfortunately. The Pittsburgh Steelers are getting a solid B. Not a great draft for them, but not a bad draft either. They moved up 10 spots to get Devin Bush, linebacker from Michigan. I think Bush is very raw, and I had him in the 20s on my big board. The high 20s, to be exact. And he is somewhat similar to Devin White, even though I had White much higher on my board, as they both tested very similarly at the combine. Both are really raw. I just think Devin White has more upside, but I do think Devin Bush is really solid as well. I think they gave up a decent bit, but obviously Bush was not going to be on the board at 20, and Shazier's probably not coming back, so not a bad move by the Steelers. They obviously did not have their 2nd, since that was part of the Bush deal. In the 3rd round, Deontay Johnson, wide receiver Toledo, I thought that was a reach. Justin Lane, corner from Michigan, I thought that was nice value. Had him as a late 2nd round guy. Benny Snell in the 4th, pretty talented player, solid power, solid receiving ability as well. And then after that, some solid value picks on defense in Sutton Smith, Isaiah Buggs, and Ulysses Gilbert III, especially Buggs. I felt his presence was really missed in the national championship when Alabama did not have him. And all around, solid draft for the Steelers, but nothing to get too excited for. The Bengals will also be getting a B for me. Decent draft, but nothing too great. Jonah Williams in the 1st round. I thought that was a really nice pick. He can play tackle as well as guard. And the Bengals do need to continue to invest on their offensive line. They've tried to in the past. It hasn't really worked. Guys like Cedric Abuhe, That pick was a total disaster. Round 2, Drew Sample, tight end from Washington. He's a good blocking tight end, but that was way too high to pick him. I don't even think I had him in my top 10 for tight ends. And to put that in perspective, I think I had Caleb Wilson at 5, who was Mr. Irrelevant. Wilson was 4 or 5, not entirely sure. Jermaine Pratt in the 3rd round, I thought that was a solid value selection. I thought that was fair value, nothing too outrageous. I think he's a pretty solid player. He can play inside. He can also play outside, and that's a huge need for them. So he's going to get some early playing time. And then after that, Ryan Finley in the 4th. I don't know. I thought a team like maybe Philadelphia should have gotten Finley, who needs a backup for an injury-prone quarterback. Andy Dalton isn't necessarily injury-prone, but I do think it is smart to consider a quarterback. Is Finley the future? I don't think so. I don't think he has a starter ceiling, and I think they should have looked at Tyree Jackson in like round 7 or something. And Ronell Wren, late 4th, solid selection. Michael Jordan, late 4th. I thought that was a pretty nice value, the guard from Ohio State. And then my favorite value selection that the Bengals made was Rodney Anderson, running back from Oklahoma, late in the 6th round. He was my number 3 running back in the class, which may seem generous, but he does have an injury history. He did tear his ACL on the opening game of the college football season, but I really like his skill set, and I think he's going to be a really good player in the NFL. I think him and Joe Mixon are going to make a nice tandem, and that sort of makes Giovanni Bernard the odd man out, so I think a team could maybe look to trade like a 4th or something for him. I think that's fair value for Cincinnati. The Ravens are going to get a C+. I'm really not that big of a fan of their draft. They traded down 3 spots to get Marquise Brown. Not a bad haul, getting a 4 and a 6. I don't love Brown, though. He's my number 5 receiver in the class, and he was the first one taken. I don't know about the fit. I know a lot of people absolutely love this fit, but the thing is, the 4 receivers I had ahead of him I think make more sense. DK Metcalf and Hakeem Butler, big bodies. They have a nice radius for Lamar Jackson. Obviously, Butler was a 4th-round pick, but I'm saying maybe in the 3rd they could have looked at him. And DK Metcalf, very similar. And then A.J. Brown and N'Keal Harry, good route runners, more of reliable guys. Whereas Marquise Brown is more of a deep threat, can stretch the field, which is great. But I don't know about Lamar Jackson's accuracy deep. And then Miles Boykin in the 3rd round is also a deep threat. He is a big body, though, 6'4". So I just don't know about those picks. Jalen Ferguson was a little bit before Boykin in the 3rd round. I think that's really nice value. I think that was like pick 82 or 83. I probably had him in the late 30s, early 40s in my big board, so nice value selection. And then after that, 4th round, Justice Hill, my number 2 running back in the class, only behind Josh Jacobs. I really like Hill. I really like his athleticism and his overall playmaking ability. I think a better version of Devin Singletary in the NFL. I think he'll be better than Singletary. And then after that, the only notable pick was their final one in the 6th round, Trace McSorley, quarterback, Penn State. I don't get that at all. I don't think Trace McSorley deserves to get picked. He is not a great passer, more of a runner. Sounds a lot like Lamar Jackson, wink, wink. But I just don't think he should have gotten picked unless he has like a Taysom Hill career in the NFL, which I could see. And if that's the case, then that will be a good pick for Baltimore. But all around, I feel like they had an overrated draft. I think they've gotten some high grades that they don't really deserve, in my opinion. Now on to the Cleveland Browns. I'm going to give them an A-. Really solid draft for Cleveland. They traded their 1st-round pick in the Odell Beckham deal. Win for them. In the 2nd round, they traded up 3 spots to select Greedy Williams, cornerback, LSU. That is an absolute steal. I had Williams 9th on my draft board. They got him at 46, which is incredible value. Greedy is tall, lean, really good ball skills, really athletic. The only problem with him is he's not a great tackler, not phenomenal in run support. I don't think that's incredibly important for corners. Obviously, you do need to know how to tackle, and I think tackling can be taught, but elite ball skills can't really be taught. Height obviously can't be taught, and neither can athleticism. So I think that's a phenomenal selection. 3rd round, Sione Takitaki, linebacker, BYU. Don't really know about that selection. Might have been a bit high for him. And their linebacking core, I feel, is solid. And then in the late rounds, the only value pick that really stood out to me was Mack Wilson, linebacker from Alabama. I don't love Wilson as much as other people do. I had like a late 2nd, early 3rd round grade on him. but to get him in the 5th round is really a nice value. I don't know how all these talented linebackers like him, Voshon Joseph, Blake Cashman, etc., were available this late in the draft, and we took Jelani Tavai in the 2nd round, but still, really nice pick by the Browns, and overall, I don't think this is an incredible draft, and the A- might be propelled due to the Greedy Williams pick, but overall, solid draft for Cleveland. I don't see how they wouldn't win the division. I mean, there's obviously a chance they don't win it, but I definitely would put money on it. The Kansas City Chiefs will be getting a B- from me, and I feel like a B- is generous, but that's just because of 2 really good picks. They traded up in the 2nd to get Mecole Hardman, wide receiver, Georgia. Thought that was a bit early, but he is a talented player, pretty fast. And obviously, I think DK Metcalf would have been a better value pick. So would Hakeem Butler. So would Riley Ridley. I feel like any of those would make more sense. Kelvin Harmon was a 6th rounder, but I still think that would have been better value per se than Hardman, but he's not bad. And then with their other 2nd, Juan Thornhill, safety, Virginia. I love Juan Thornhill. Really athletic. He can play nickel corner. He can play safety. My number 2 safety in the class, only behind Nasir Adderley. Really like that selection. And then in the 3rd round, Kalen Saunders, defensive tackle from Western Illinois. Extremely athletic. Really solid Senior Bowl. And I feel like other than the Thornhill and Saunders selection, they didn't really do anything in day 3 that really stood out. So not a great draft for the Chiefs, but I think they got 2 really good players. And if those 2 can develop into starters, then not a bad draft for KC. Other than my Lions, obviously, there was no team that I was more curious about what they would do this draft than the Oakland Raiders. They acquired 3 first-round picks by trading away Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper. And all around, I don't think this was a great draft for Oakland. I give them a C. Now, yes, they had 3 first-round picks. They want to make sure they get the guys they want rather than value, which I think makes sense. But I do feel all 3 of their first-round picks were not phenomenal value. Cleveland Furrow at 4, very safe pick, high character, high floor, sort of like Christian Wilkins. I think he'll be a good player, but he doesn't have the ceiling that a Josh Allen has. And I think 4 was way too high for him. I think they could have traded down to like the 9, 10, 11 range, and I think they could have snagged him there. Pick 24, Josh Jacobs, running back, Alabama. I think it was a good move to get Jacobs. They do need a running back. I think 24 is a tad bit high, but I don't think it's a bad move by the Raiders to do it. Marshawn Lynch retired. Isaiah Crowell is not the answer. Jalen Richard's not the answer. Doug Martin's not the answer. Jacobs does not have a lot of mileage when he has football. He is electric. Solid pick. And then Jonathan Abram at 27. I'm not a huge Jonathan Abram guy. Old school, thumper, very John Gruden-esque player, very Raiders-esque player, but there are a bunch of safeties I liked more, like Juan Thornhill, like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, like Nasir Adderley, and I think that was a bit high. Trayvon Mullen in the 2nd, I thought that was also a bit too high. Solid national championship, solid production, but he's really not amazing. And then they had a solid day 3, Max Crosby, Isaiah Johnson, Foster Muro, not bad 4th round selections. Hunter Renfrow in the 5th, obviously not the biggest, standing at just 5'10", but lots of production at Clemson. I don't think he'll be great in the NFL, but I mean, he caught the game-winning touchdown in the national championship a couple years ago, so I guess he's a fun player. He's also been in college like Ken Webster for probably about 27 years now, so I think this was not a good draft by the Oakland Raiders, but I do still have faith in Gruden and Mayock that they can turn this team around, but I think they could have done a lot better. Last year I gave the Broncos my A+, and I think that was a little bit nice. I would say they probably deserved like a B+, and usually I'm right about my A+. In 2016, I gave it to Jacksonville. They drafted Jalen Ramsey, Myles Jack, and Yannick Ngakoue that year. 2017, I gave it to the Saints when they got Marshawn Lattimore, Ryan Ramczyk, Marcus Williams, Alvin Kamara. So I usually know what I'm talking about when I give these A+, so Bills fans be excited. But that's besides the point. The Broncos had another good draft this year. I'm giving them an A-. They moved down from 10 to 20. They got pretty nice value from that deal. And they got Noah Fant at 20. Nice value selection. Extremely athletic. I've had him ranked higher than Hawkinson for most of the season. but sort of changed late with my final big board, just because Fan is not a great blocker, but he's a phenomenal receiver, very athletic, can stretch the field. I think he's going to be really good in the NFL. Very new-aged, modern tight end. In the second round, Dalton Risner, offensive lineman from Kansas State. He can play tackle, he can play guard, he can play center. Solid value there. And then the pick after, they traded up to get Drew Lock, quarterback, Missouri. Clearly they don't love Drew Lock, or else they would have pulled the trigger on him at 20. And I don't know about that faith. However, getting him in the second round is really nice value. I had them getting him at 10 in my final mock draft, and I graded him as a first-round prospect. Not the most consistent at times, but he has a really good arm, and I think he'll be a starting-level quarterback in this league. Draymond Jones in the third round, solid value. Justin Hollins in the fifth, go Ducks, solid value. So all around, really solid draft for the Denver Broncos, and I'm very curious to see how these players turn out. Definitely one of the more interesting draft classes, in my opinion. Like the Denver Broncos, their AFC West foe Chargers will be getting an A-. Really solid draft for the Los Angeles Chargers. So at 28, they got Jerry Tillery, defensive tackle, Notre Dame. I've had Tillery going at 28 to the Chargers in pretty much most of my mock drafts. However, my last one, I did not. I had been going with Elgton Jenkins, so unfortunately I was wrong in my last one, but I have had that pairing numerous times. At 60 in the second round, they got Nasir Adderley, safety from Delaware, my number one safety in the class. I absolutely love Adderley. Very athletic, very rangy, good ball skills. And I think him and Derwin James are going to be the best safety tandem in the NFL in no time. I think they're going to be the next Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor. And I think the Chargers defense has a very bright future. They just need to fix up their linebacking core. Round 3, Trey Pipkins, offensive tackle from Sioux Falls. I have never heard of this dude. I'm just going to be straight up honest. But he is a project, and I think the Chargers should have gone with an offensive lineman who might be better now. I think Bobby Evans might have been on the board then, not entirely sure. Drew Samia. There were other offensive linemen as well who I think make more sense, but he does have some potential. And then after that, Drew Tranquill, solid pick in the 4th. Easton Stick, quarterback, North Dakota State, in the 5th round. I like Tyree Jackson better. I think Clayton Thorson went after that. I liked him a little bit more. But I do like Easton Stick as well. He is a solid quarterback. I like his upside, and I think he will be a nice backup with the Chargers. This is my 4th year now of doing draft grades. I've never given the Jaguars anything worse than an A-, and I've always had a soft spot for the Jaguars, so it's a little bit biased maybe, but I've really liked what they've done the past couple years. 2016, they got an A+. That was very well deserved. As I mentioned earlier, 2017, they got an A when they drafted Leonard Fournette, Cam Robinson, and Dede Westbrook. Solid draft, but I'd say that's more of a B. 2018, my first time I did draft grades on YouTube, I think I gave that an A-. Really like DJ Chark and Ronnie Harrison. That draft looks like a B as well. And then this year, I'm giving them an A. Josh Allen fell to their laps at 7. Phenomenal value. I'm a little bit salty that he wasn't on the board for us, but TJ Hawkinson is cool, I guess. But Allen is a phenomenal player, my number 4 overall in the draft. He can get to the quarterback, he can go in coverage, and the Jaguars could use an edge rusher. All they really have is Yannick Ngakoue. Calais Campbell, I don't really classify him as an edge rusher per se. He is still really good. Taven Bryan, same thing, wouldn't necessarily call him an edge rusher. And then their other outside linebackers, Telvin Smith and Miles Jack, are more of coverage, run-stopper guys rather than getting to the quarterback. In the second round, they traded up to get offensive tackle Jawan Taylor. I had them getting him at 7 in my last mock, so getting him in the second round is really good value. He does have some knee concerns, and I think he might have small off-the-field stuff that hasn't really been talked about until his slipping. But overall, I think they're getting another top 10 player in this draft, as he's very athletic, pretty good run blocker, solid pass blocker as well. He'll slide right into right tackle and replace Jeremy Parnell, and I would say that's definitely an upgrade. And now they have 5 really solid starters on their offensive line. Round 3, Josh Oliver, tight end, San Jose State, as he's a solid receiver and is overall a talented player, does have some work to do, needs to work on his blocking. And then later in the third, Quincy Wilson, safety/linebacker from Murray State. I like athletic, hybrid type players, but sort of like the Trey Pipkins pick, I really have never heard of this dude. But I do like what I read about him, and he's also the brother of Quinnen Williams, which I did not know Quinnen had a brother. Round 5, Raquel Armstead, I kind of like him. Solid power, overall solid player. I think he was my number 9 or 10 running back. Round 6, Gardner Minshew, quarterback, Washington State. He had a really good year this year with the Cougars, and I think he deserves to get picked. I think there were better quarterbacks on the board, obviously like Tyree Jackson, who I think makes sense for the Jaguars, who could use a young guy to develop once Nick Foles' contract ends. I don't know if the Jaguars, how long that they're going to keep Foles after his 4-year deal. So all around, another good draft for Jacksonville. Tennessee Titans get a B+. I think it's a very solid draft for the Titans. I think a lot of people have given them higher grades than this, and I don't love it, but I also think it's a quality draft for Tennessee. Jeffrey Simmons at 19, top 10 talent, but there's off-the-field concerns, which I don't really think are that big of a deal because there are mistakes he made a while ago. Mississippi State coaching staff and teachers and people who know him speak very highly of him. So I do believe that, and obviously he has made mistakes in his past, but I do think he is a work-in-progress character. But the ACL injury really makes me question this pick because he's probably not going to play this year. And the Titans are a team that is contending for a playoff spot. So I just don't really understand that. But they are thinking about the long term, getting someone who has a chance to be really, really good. And I like his upside. Round 2, A.J. Brown, wide receiver, Ole Miss. Wide receiver is not a gigantic need, but I feel like they could use an extra. And this is really solid value for Brown, my number 2 receiver in the class. First round grade on him. He's a really good route runner, really nice hands. I think him and Corey Davis will be a nice pairing with Davis as that big body red zone threat. Round 3, Nate Davis, guard from Charlotte. Solid pick. They need work in the interior of their offensive line. And then they had a really solid day 3. They had 3 selections, getting Amani Hooker in the 4th, DeAndre Walker in the 5th, and David Long in the 6th. I think those are all really solid value picks, especially Walker and David Long. I gave Long a better grade than Jelani Tavai, which makes me sad. But I think all around, really nice draft for the Titans, and I think their fans should be excited for this upcoming season. The Houston Texans get a C-, the second worst draft in the NFL, only behind the Giants, and the worst draft in the entire conference. Really not a fan of what they did. Now, remember, I gave the Falcons a B, even though they didn't have great value, because they got 2 plug-and-play starters in Chris Lindstrom and Caleb McGarry. But the thing with Titus Howard is, he's athletic, and I love his upside, but he's so raw. I don't think he's a starting caliber player yet, but considering he was their first-round offensive lineman, I feel like they're almost obligated to start him just because their O-line is so bad. Obviously, they would have taken Andre Dillard at 23 had not the Eagles trade up and stole him, but I think Cody Ford or Juwan Taylor would have made a ton more sense in that spot, and I think this is definitely a reach. As I said, I like Titus Howard. He got a mid to late second-round grade from me, and since he's going in the late first, I think that's way too high. Round 2, Lonnie Johnson, corner from Kentucky. I like Lonnie Johnson. Very tall, very lean. And I think that's fair value for him here in the second round. And then the pick after, Max Sharping, another raw offensive lineman that I think was taken around too early. And I don't know what the Texans are going to do, if they're going to trot out their same unit or have these raw players starting in it. I just don't know about what they're doing here. Round 3, Kahale Warring, tight end from San Diego State. He's a solid player, big frame, and I do think he is pretty raw, but I like his upside. And then after that, the only day 3 pick that I really liked was Charles Omenihu. I had a third-round grade on him. I like his versatility. And other than that, just not a good draft for the Texans. And I don't know how thrilled Deshaun Watson is with getting 2 extremely raw offensive linemen. The Indianapolis Colts get a B-. I think I've seen a lot of higher grades than this for the Colts. I just don't love what they did in comparison to other people. They traded down from 26 to get a second rounder this year from the Redskins and a second next year. That's decent value, but it's not great. It's not awful value, but I think they could have gotten more. With their second-round pick they got from the Jets last year in the Sam Darnold deal, they took Rocky Sin, corner from Temple. I think that's really solid value. As you can see, he's wearing a Presbyterian jersey in this. He originally went to Presbyterian and then transferred for his final year to Temple, where he sort of blew up. He is a physical press corner, and while Greedy Williams is on the board, I do like Rocky Sin, and I don't think that's a bad pick. Ben Benogu in the pick they got from Washington earlier in the draft. Thought that was a little bit high for him, but he is a talented edge rusher, and I do think they need an edge presence. And then with their other second-round pick, Paris Campbell, wide receiver, Ohio State, he can stretch the field, but I think DK Metcalf would have made so much more sense for them. They have T.Y. Hilton, who can already stretch the field, so why not go for a big body in the red zone? Yeah, they do have Eric Ebron, but I feel like they could have used that on the outside as a wide receiver. But I do like Paris Campbell, and I think this is pretty solid value. And then in the third round, Bobby Okereke, linebacker from Stanford. He can play inside and outside. I do think there are better linebackers like Mack Wilson and Voshawn Joseph on the board. And then on day 3, no really great value picks. I think Marvell Tellin the fifth isn't really bad, but other than that, pretty meh. A little bit below average draft for the Colts, I think. So that'll end the video. I hope you all enjoyed. This is it for 2019 draft content. Draft season is over, which really disappoints me to say. It's one of my favorite times of the year. And, well, there's always next year. There's always the first round of next year's draft, which I think is in 363 days away, since we have a leap year in there. My goodness, that's too long.